Video games and music. It's a long and expansive topic, but today I want to hyper-focus on musicians and bands that have video games made about them. And I want to review one from a band that frankly I think is the supreme champion in this space. There are tons of examples of artists who've had video games made for them, even events, models, downloadable content, playable characters, unlockables, you name it. This can be traced way back when Michael Jackson had his own Sega Genesis game, Moonwalker, all the way up to now with Sabrina Carpenter getting her own event and Fortnite skin. For those who love a certain artist and type of video game, it's the perfect merging of worlds, a way to show your love for music and experience it with the most interactive medium known to man. And there's so many of them, frankly. Did you know that, for example, Fred Durst has been in 3 video games, and one of them being the Fight Club video game where you could fight Abraham Lincoln? I'm not knocking any artist in particular when I say this next part of my script, but most of these examples don't really have that feeling or soul about the artist that they're about sometimes. Beatles Rock Band, for example, while it does have the music by the Beatles and features the Beatles in the full glory of the PlayStation 3 HD resolution, the Beatles themselves as a band and the members of that band definitely didn't have a full say in what type of game they'd be making or which buttons you'd be pressing on Sgt. Pepper on expert mode, especially since most of those guys were dead when the game fully came out. My point is that a lot of these games don't feel like a continuation of the artist's work. They don't have the soul of those albums or songs that fans love those musicians for. I imagine that most musicians don't really have a say in what their game is about, what the mechanics of those games are, or even what the genre of that game might be. I think it's cool as hell that we can go to a Travis Scott concert in Fortnite, but how cool would it be if Travis Scott directed his own video game? What would that even really look like? Video games themselves are just so dynamic in how you can play them or even how you can interpret them. It would just be sick as hell to play a video game that in a way complements the music of the artist that you really like. Enter Radiohead. Radiohead, a genre and generational-defining rock band. They push the boundaries for electronic music and merge that with rock and roll to mainly kind of dissect and criticize the politics of its time, the everyday problems of modern life, depression, you name it really. Look at any online music forum or review aggregator and Radiohead's music is easily in the top 10. And believe it or not, the game I want to talk about today really isn't even their first video game. Their first video game was actually on mobile devices and it was called Polyphona. It's a bizarre floating / walking simulator where you travel through ghostly and bizarre vegetative worlds by finding these red orbs that transport you to each one. Each world has its own color scheme and soundscape that make it a trippy experience. Sit in an office chair in a dark room and use the phone's internal gyro tool, and then you're basically traveling across worlds within the realm of Radiohead's era of King of Limbs, back when you had a 2014 smartphone. It was a short-lived experience from what I remember. Sadly, there's really no way to play it now as it's been delisted from all app stores. If anyone has a way of playing it, please share in the comments. However, the game I want to talk about for today's video actually is a continuation of sorts of 2 of their most acclaimed albums, Kid A and Amnesia. Combining the styles of both albums and the music from them, along with some unreleased Radiohead work, you get Now you might be asking yourself, what does exhibition mean in the title? And that plays a little bit into the genre this game is, a walking simulator. I have talked about walking sims in the past where there's at least some movement tech to be had, but this one is just a straight on walking game. You have the option for a brisk jog, but you'll most likely be looking around with a casual pace, listening to the small chirps and buzzes of the world and uncovering small little secrets about the museum of sorts that you're within. That sign at the beginning of the game gives you a general idea as to how you should approach this one. Slow, methodical, with some curiosity and appreciation for the otherworldly vibes, sounds, and overall the design of the world and structure. Really, there's not a lot of video games that are like this, and I know a theme of Radiohead persists in every single room, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. Radiohead isn't as commercial as some other artists you might be thinking of off the top of your head, and a lot of their work is really more of a cerebral and non-advertisement type. Think of early day Gorillaz music videos. Obviously, if you're a big Radiohead fan, this game's right up your nose. I personally am a bigger OK Computer fan, but Exhibition really has some standout moments that made my jaw hit the floor and honestly made me teary-eyed at sometimes. The faint whispers, crude figures roaming around the hallways, and the slight humor bring an aesthetic that can be a bit erratic, but also calming at the same time. It's just a really cool feeling when you walk into a certain room and recognize a certain melody or song that the room is part of, and you get lost in like big and small details in the actual room you're in, especially with how pretty this game looks. There are over a dozen rooms to explore and sections of the museum to navigate through. Part of the challenge of this game is technically figuring out how to get to the end credits. So speedrunners, if you are out there, check this out. I personally am interested in the gift shop any percent speedrun. I'll try to avoid anything super major, but the magic in this game is really taking your time and seeing what works and what doesn't. Like an art exhibit, it may be best paired with hors d'oeuvres and a party favors to really get the mindset that you're looking for this experience. And that's really what makes this game so special, in my opinion. Its experience is well-paced enough and quick enough to check out for a night or two. Maybe show it to your friends and just trip out on a Thursday night with a tin of caviar. The obvious star of this show is the sound and the music in this game. It's so ambient and rhythmic and intriguing at the same time. Learning more about some of your favorite Radiohead songs or even finding your new favorite one in the next room, it's a real momentous occasion that, in my opinion, adds a lot of replay value later on. And to be honest, also, hearing your favorite Radiohead song in one of the more cinematic rooms can really feel like you're living and playing through a music video. As you can obviously see, the game just looks gorgeous. I recall at times when this game came out, and it had some optimization issues here and there. I think that the big challenge at times is this game's file intake when it's loading the next room. That's mainly because of the quality and the size of unique textures that are in the room itself. Playing on low graphics may technically be the way Radiohead intended it, but seeing it on the epic settings is really radical. Surfaces look so crisp, reflections are so nice to look at, and overall, the actual layout and structure of a lot of the textures and the composition of each room lends itself to being really photorealistic or abstract enough to be interesting, almost dreamlike. If you want to check this game out, you can get it at the Epic Game Store, and I believe the PS5, for the low price of free $99. I also recall when I first downloaded this game, there's Fortnite main menu music that's exclusive to it, so if you're a Zoomer who likes this game and Fortnite, check that out as well. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you guys think of this video, and leave a like and comment.